The tour operators thought it would be a good idea to get a souvenir t-shirt for each customer who went on the ocean bike tour. They found a company who would sell them shirts with their logo for $3. Make a table and a graph that shows number of shirts and cost. Okay, anytime you're turning a scenario like this, basically a story, into a table, into a graph, or into an equation, which it asks for later, we need to identify what the variables are. The variables are the values that are changing. So this 3 here is not a variable because this 3 is always going to be 3. The values that are changing are the number of shirts and the cost for all of the shirts. These are going to be what are represented in our graph and what is shown in our table. Before we fill in our table, we need to know which variable is the independent variable and which variable is the dependent variable. And all you have to do is ask yourself this question. Does the number of shirts depend on the cost, or does the cost depend on the number of shirts? Hopefully you said that the cost of the shirts depends on the number of shirts. So the cost is dependent. It's the dependent variable, which means it goes on the right side of our table. And the number of shirts, which we'll use N for, but you could use any letter that you want, is the independent variable. Okay, the number of shirts is going to be shown on our x-axis. That is where we put the independent variable. If you were to flip your independent variable and dependent variable, it would not be the end of the world. So number of shirts will be x, and I'm going to attempt to write vertically here. And that is actually very, very neat. All right, so let's go ahead and fill in our table. I always like to use 0, and you'll see why. I'm also going to switch to a different color. In the next problem, you'll see why I always like to start with 0. It can be very useful. The cost for 0 shirts is $0. There's no shipping cost listed in the problem. It's just $3 a shirt. So for 1 shirt, it's $3, which means for 2 shirts, it's 6, and then 9, and then 12. And I want you to notice that this number 3 here, which I'm now going to circle in blue, is also shown here in our table. This can be very useful. It's also shown one other way. It's the increasing value along the right side of our table, along our dependent variable. It's plus 3 every time. It's a constant rate. This tells us that our line is going to be a straight line. And you'll always see your unit rate as the constant increasing variable, or the constant increasing amount on the right side of the table, as long as it's going by plus 1 on the left side, which in this case it is. All right, so let's go ahead and start graphing. We need to list some numbers in here. I'm going to go by ones on the x-axis, and I'm just going to leave it at that. And then I could go by ones here, but what'll happen is I'll only be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I won't be able to get as much data shown on my graph if I go by ones, so I'm going to go by threes. 3, 6, 9, 12, and I'm going to stop here, but ordinarily you would continue, and then we can go ahead and plot our points. 0, 0, 1, 3, 2, 6, 3, 9, and there's a very clear pattern here that we should all be seeing, and I'm going to go ahead and make my line. And no matter where your table stops, just continue that line all the way to the end, and I like to put an arrow at the end to show that this pattern is going on forever. Now let's go ahead and go to the next part of the problem.